7 years can change a man. 7 years ago, I was Michael Turner, a respected mechanic in Riverbend, Ohio, with what I thought was a perfect family. Today, I'm still Michael Turner, but everything else has changed. My hands are rougher now, my eyes a little more cautious, and my heart, well, let's just say it's been through the ringer. I never planned to run. That wasn't my style. But when you discover your entire life is built on lies, sometimes running is the only thing that makes sense. It started with headaches. Ryan, my 14-year-old son, or so I thought, needed glasses. Simple enough. The school nurse suggested we get his eyes checked, but Linda, my wife of 17 years, kept putting it off. Money was tight, she said. We'd get to it. But Ryan's headaches got worse. Being the provider I was, I scheduled the appointment myself. The optometrist was thorough, too thorough. He noticed something in Ryan's eyes that concerned him, some rare genetic marker that can indicate a predisposition to certain conditions. He suggested we all get tested, just to be safe. Family medical history is important, he said, not knowing he was about to detonate a bomb that would obliterate my life. The test results came back on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd taken the day off to fix the leaky bathroom faucet that had been driving Linda crazy for weeks. I was elbow deep in pipes when my phone rang. Mr. Turner, this is Dr. Levine's office. There's been an irregularity with your family's test results. Could you come in today? The doctor's office was cold, not just the temperature, but the way they looked at me, with pity. Dr. Levine, a balding man with kind eyes, sat me down and cleared his throat twice before speaking. Mr. Turner, the genetic markers we tested for, there's no easy way to say this. You're not Ryan's biological father. I laughed. I actually laughed right in his face. That's impossible. There must be a mistake. Dr. Levine slid a paper across his desk. We ran the test twice, sir. The probability of non-paternity is 99.9998%. I'm very sorry. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. 17 years of marriage. 14 years raising a boy I thought was mine. How many other lies had I swallowed? Linda was in the kitchen when I got home, chopping vegetables for dinner like it was any other day. Like she hadn't been living a lie for over a decade. How long have you known? I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. She didn't turn around. Known what, Mike? That Ryan isn't my son. The knife stopped mid-chop. Her shoulders tensed, then slumped. When she finally turned to face me, her expression wasn't guilt or remorse. It was annoyance. How did you find out? She asked, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. The genetic test. Answer my question, Linda. How long have you known? She sighed, setting down the knife. Since the beginning. It was a mistake, Mike. One night before we were married, it didn't mean anything. 14 years, Linda. 14 years you let me believe he was mine. He is yours, she snapped. You raised him. What difference does biology make? I stared at her, this woman I thought I knew. Who is his real father? She waved her hand dismissively. It doesn't matter, he was never in the picture. It matters to me. Why, so you can go confront him? Make a scene? What good would that do? I noticed she was keeping the kitchen island between us, like she was afraid of what I might do. I'd never raised a hand to her in all our years together. Never even yelled, but the look in her eyes suggested she thought I might start now. Is Rachel mine? I asked, thinking of our 16-year-old daughter, who had my eyes, or so everyone said. Yes, Linda answered quickly. Of course she is. And Megan, our youngest, just 10. Linda hesitated a beat too long. Mike, that was all I needed to hear. The room started spinning. 2 of my 3 children weren't mine. My marriage was a sham. I want another test, I said, for all of them. Don't be ridiculous. What would that prove? You're their father in every way that matters. I slammed my fist on the counter, making her jump. Every way except the truth. Did you ever plan to tell me, or was I just going to go to my grave not knowing I'd raised another man's children? Keep your voice down, she hissed. They'll hear you. Let them hear. Let them know their mothers have been lying to everyone for years. Linda's face hardened. If you tell them, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? You destroyed this family the moment you decided to lie to me, I shot back. She crossed her arms. So what now? You going to walk out on us? Abandon your children because of some stupid test? My children? I laughed bitterly. According to that stupid test, I only have one child. Maybe. The next few days were a cold war in our house. I slept in the spare room. Linda told the kids I was coming down with something and didn't want them to catch it. I called in sick to work and spent my days driving around town, trying to think. On the third day, I went to see my old friend Jake Peterson, who worked at an insurance company. We'd been buddies since high school, and he was one of the few people I trusted completely. I need a favor, I told him over beers in his garage. It's about Linda. Jake looked uncomfortable. What kind of favor? I need to know if she's taken out any policies I don't know about. He nearly choked on his beer. Jesus, Mike, that's not something I can just look up. Please, Jake, I think something's not right. She's been lying to me for years about the kids. What else has she been hiding? Jake ran a hand through his thinning hair. This is serious stuff, man. If you're suspicious, why not just ask her? Because I don't trust a word out of her mouth anymore. He sighed, then nodded slowly. Give me a couple days. But you didn't hear anything from me, got it? 2 days later, Jake called me to meet at our usual spot, a quiet bar on the edge of town. His face told me everything before he even opened his mouth. There's a policy, he said quietly. $2 million, taken out 3 years ago. My stomach dropped. On who? On you, Mike. Linda's the beneficiary. I felt sick. 3 years ago, that's when she started pushing me to go skydiving for my birthday and rock climbing. Said I needed more adventure in my life. Jake didn't say anything, but his eyes said it all. There's more, he continued reluctantly. The policy has a suicide exclusion, but it pays triple for accidental death. $6 million if I died in an accident. Suddenly, all those adventure activities Linda had been encouraging made terrible sense. Mike, if what you're thinking is right, you need to be careful. Really careful. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me tense. Was my wife capable of murder? A week ago, I would have laughed at the suggestion. Now I wasn't so sure. I slipped out of bed at 3 a.m. and went to Linda's home office. Her computer was password protected, but I knew she used the same password for everything. Megan's birthday. Inside her email, I found conversations with her sister Emily that made my blood run cold. He's still not suspicious, one email read, but we need to move things along. The interest on Mom's medical bills is killing us. Another, Ryan's tuition is due next month. We need that money, Lynn. Make it happen. And the most damning, Brad said he can make it look like an accident. No one would ever know. Brad. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Brad Coleman was Emily's ex-husband, a former military guy with a mean streak. He'd always given me the creeps. I forwarded the emails to myself, then cleared the sent folder. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely use the mouse. By morning, I had a plan. Not much of one, but enough to keep me alive. I went to work as usual, smiled at Linda when she handed me my lunch, and kissed the kids goodbye like it was any other day. Then I drove straight to the bank and withdrew $15,000 from our joint savings. Nearly everything we had. I left enough to avoid immediate suspicion. Next, I visited my lawyer, Thomas Grant, an old college friend who'd helped us with our wills years ago. I need to disappear, I told him bluntly, and I need your help to do it legally. Tom stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What the hell are you talking about, Mike? I showed him the emails, explained about the genetic tests and the insurance policy. Holy shit, he whispered. Have you gone to the police? With what? Suspicious emails? A life insurance policy? That's not evidence of anything. It's enough for them to investigate. I shook my head. By the time they figure anything out, I might be dead. I need to disappear now, today. Tom looked pained. Mike, running makes you look guilty. If you just vanish, they'll think you've done something wrong. I don't care what they think. I care about staying alive. In the end, Tom reluctantly agreed to help. He drew up papers transferring my half of the house to Linda, a gesture to make it look like I was planning to file for divorce, not disappear. He also gave me contact information for a colleague in Texas who could help me establish a new identity, legally. "This is a mistake," Tom said as I was leaving. "But if you're determined to do this, call me when you're settled, just so I know you're okay." I nodded, shook his hand, and walked out of his office for the last time. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a motel under a fake name, paid cash, and made my final preparations. I wrote letters to Rachel, Ryan, and Megan, explaining that I loved them no matter what, and sealed them in envelopes to be mailed in 6 months if I didn't return. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth about their mother. Let them keep their innocence a little longer. Before dawn, I loaded my few belongings into my truck and hit the highway, heading southwest. I switched vehicles at a used car lot in Kentucky, paying cash for a nondescript sedan. By the time Linda reported me missing, I was crossing the Texas state line, my old life receding in the rearview mirror. Clearwater, Texas, wasn't much to look at, a dusty little town off the main highways, population 3,146 according to the faded welcome sign. But it had what I needed, anonymity. I used the name Michael Thomas, close enough to my real name that I'd respond naturally, different enough to avoid easy discovery. With Tom's colleagues' help, I established a paper trail that would hold up to casual scrutiny. Nothing illegal, just carefully obscured. The first few months were the hardest. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if I'd overreacted. Maybe those emails had an innocent explanation. Maybe the life insurance was just Linda being practical. Maybe I'd thrown away my life for nothing. Then I'd remember the cold calculation in her eyes when I confronted her about Ryan. The way she'd called the genetic test stupid. The ease with which she'd lied to me for 14 years. And I knew I'd made the right choice. I bought an old gas station on the edge of town with an attached garage. The previous owner had died and his children were eager to sell. I'd always been good with my hands, and cars were the one constant in my life. Within a year, Turner's Garage in Phillip was turning a modest profit. I added a small convenience store, then expanded to 24-hour service. The locals appreciated having somewhere to grab milk at midnight or get their cars fixed on short notice. To them, I was just Mike Thomas, the quiet mechanic who kept to himself but was always fair with his prices. Some thought I was running from a broken heart. Others figured I was an ex-con trying to go straight. No one pushed for details, and I volunteered none. I made a few friends, nothing deep, but enough to avoid total isolation. Hank, who owned the hardware store. Maggie, who ran the diner where I ate breakfast most mornings. Sheriff Williams, who stopped by for coffee and conversation when he was on patrol. For the first time in my adult life, I answered to no one. No wife expecting me home by 6. No kids needing help with homework. No mortgage payments hanging over my head. Just me, my business, and the wide Texas sky. It was lonely sometimes, but it was also peaceful. I didn't date. Couldn't bring myself to trust anyone enough for that. When Maggie tried to set me up with her newly divorced cousin, I made excuses until she gave up. The last thing I needed was more complications. 4 years passed this way. I expanded the business, adding a second bay to the garage and hiring a local kid named Joey to help with the store. I bought a small house on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy but all mine. I sent anonymous gifts to my kids on their birthdays, untraceable gift cards mailed from different cities. It wasn't much, but it was all I could safely do. I checked the Riverbend newspaper online occasionally, searching for any mention of Linda or the kids. Rachel had made the dean's list at Ohio State. Ryan had quarterbacked the high school team to the state championships. Megan had won a science fair. They were doing fine without me. Then, one warm September evening, everything changed. I was at the Watering Hole, the only decent bar in Clearwater, nursing a beer and watching a baseball game on the ancient TV. The place was nearly empty, just me, the bartender, and a couple of locals playing pool in the back. The door opened, letting in a blast of hot air, and 2 strangers, a woman in her late 30s and a young man, maybe 20 or so. Something about them seemed vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place them. The woman scanned the bar, her eyes passing over me, then returning. She nudged her companion and whispered something. They approached my table slowly, like I might bolt if they moved too quickly. "Michael Turner?" the woman asked, her voice carrying a hint of the Midwest that I hadn't heard in years. I froze, my beer halfway to my lips. "You've got the wrong guy," I said automatically. "Name's Thomas." She smiled sadly. "No, it's not. You're Michael Turner from Riverbend, Ohio. I'd know you anywhere. You haven't changed that much." I studied her face and suddenly it clicked. "Emily," I said flatly. "Linda's sister." She nodded. "And this is Ryan." I looked at the young man beside her. The boy I'd raised for 14 years. He was taller now, broader in the shoulders. His face had lost its childish roundness, but his eyes were the same. Linda's eyes, not mine. Never mine. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice level with effort. "Can we sit?" Emily gestured to the empty chairs at my table. I hesitated, then nodded. They slid into the seats across from me. Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. "How did you find me?" I asked. "It wasn't easy," Emily admitted. "We've been looking for years." "Why?" Emily glanced at Ryan, then back to me. "Linda's sick, Michael. Really sick. Cancer. The doctors say she doesn't have much time left." I took a long pull of my beer, letting the information sink in. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally, surprised to find I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish that on her. "She wants to see you," Emily continued, "to make things right before it's too late." I laughed bitterly. "Make things right after what she did? After what you helped her do?" Emily had the grace to look ashamed. "I know we hurt you." "Hurt me?" I cut her off. "You plotted to kill me for insurance money. That goes beyond hurt." Ryan's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The confusion in his face seemed genuine. "You don't know," I realized. "She never told you why I left." "She said you had a midlife crisis," Ryan said slowly, "that you ran off with some woman you met at work." I shook my head. There was no other woman. There was just your mother trying to collect on a life insurance policy by arranging an accident for me. Emily's face had gone pale. "That's not true. Linda would never—" "Save it," I interrupted. "I saw the emails, Emily, between you and her, planning with Brad to make it look like an accident, planning how to spend the money from my policy." Ryan looked between us, confused. "Mom said you abandoned us, that you didn't want to be a father anymore." "I never abandoned my children," I said firmly. "I loved you, all three of you, more than anything. I ran because I was afraid for my life." "But why would Mom want to hurt you?" Ryan pressed. I hesitated. This wasn't how I'd imagined this conversation going. Not that I'd ever really imagined it at all. "Ryan, there's something you should know, something I found out right before I left." Emily cut in quickly. "This isn't the time or place for this, Michael." "For what?" Ryan asked. "What don't I know?" I looked him straight in the eye. "According to a genetic test we took, I'm not your biological father." The color drained from Ryan's face. "That's a lie." "I wish it were," I said quietly. "The test showed I'm not Megan's father either. Only Rachel is biologically mine." Ryan turned to Emily. "Is this true?" Emily's silence was answer enough. "Who is my real father then?" Ryan demanded. "I don't know," I admitted. "Your mother wouldn't tell me." Ryan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need some air," he muttered, and strode out of the bar. Emily and I sat in an uncomfortable silence for a long moment. "You shouldn't have told him like that," she said finally. "Were you ever going to tell him at all?" She looked away. "Linda thought it would be easier if he didn't know." "Easier for who?" I asked. "For him or for her?" Emily didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. "This is where we're staying. The roadside motel just outside town, room 14. If you change your mind about seeing Linda, let us know. We'll be here 3 more days." She stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I never knew about any insurance policy or plot to hurt you. If Linda was involved in something like that, it wasn't with my knowledge." I met her gaze steadily. "I saw the emails, Emily. Your name was all over them." She shook her head. "I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong." After she left, I sat there finishing my beer, my mind racing. Was it possible I'd misinterpreted those emails? No, they'd been clear enough. But if Ryan didn't know the truth about his parentage or my disappearance, What else had Linda kept from him? From all of them? The bartender wandered over. Everything okay, Mike? Those folks bothering you? Just ghosts from the past, I said, pushing my empty bottle away. Nothing I can't handle. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. If Linda was really dying, why send Emily and Ryan to find me? Why not Rachel, my actual biological daughter? And how had they tracked me down after all these years? I doubled back twice on the way home, checking for tails. Paranoid maybe, but paranoia had kept me alive this long. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I sat in my truck for a few minutes watching the shadows before heading inside. Once the door was locked behind me, I pulled out my burner phone, the one I kept for emergencies only, and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Hello? The voice was groggy with sleep. Tom, it's Mike Turner. A pause. Jesus Christ, do you know what time it is here? Sorry, it's important. I heard rustling and then the click of a light switch. Are you okay? It's been, 6 years? 7, I corrected. And no, I'm not okay. They found me, Tom. Who found you? Linda's sister and Ryan. They showed up at a bar in town tonight, said Linda's dying of cancer and wants to see me. Tom was silent for a moment. Do you believe them? I don't know what to believe anymore. What are you going to do? I rubbed my eyes, suddenly bone-tired. That's why I'm calling. I need to know if anything's happened back there that I should know about. Anything suspicious. Tom's voice lowered. Like what? Like has anyone else disappeared? Or died unexpectedly? Anyone connected to me or Linda? Another long pause. Mike, are you sitting down? My heart sank. Just tell me. It's about me, or rather about my firm. We had a break-in about 3 months ago. Only my office was targeted. Files were taken, including yours. What files? I thought you destroyed everything when I left. Most of it, yes, but I kept copies of the essential documents in my private safe. The police think it was a professional job. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were looking for. Cold dread washed over me. So Linda could have known where I was for months. It's possible, Tom admitted. But Mike, there's something else you should know. Something I've been trying to figure out how to tell you for years. What is it? It's about your lawyer friend in Texas, the one who helped you set up your new identity. What about him? Tom's voice was heavy. He died, Mike, about a year after you left. Car accident on a deserted road. No witnesses. My blood turned to ice. You think it wasn't an accident? I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but after what you told me about those emails, it seemed too convenient. I closed my eyes trying to process this new information. So they could have been tracking me for years. It's possible, Tom said again. But if that's true, why wait until now to approach you? Because Linda's really dying, I suggested. Last chance for revenge. Or because they've finally figured out how to get to the money, Tom countered. The insurance policy. Has it expired? Most term policies run for 10 years. I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. Find out, Tom advised. And Mike, be careful. If I were you, I'd leave town tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even me. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, weighing my options. I could run again, pack up, and disappear by morning. Start over somewhere new. But I was tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder. And there was something else, a burning need to know the truth, once and for all. Instead of packing, I pulled out my laptop and started searching. I found what I was looking for in less than an hour, the obituary of James Lawrence, the Texas lawyer who had helped me establish my new identity. Single-car accident on a rural road, vehicle found at the bottom of a ravine, body not discovered for days. Exactly the kind of accident Brad Coleman might arrange. I kept digging. Social media profiles from my children, news articles from Riverbend. Nothing about Linda having cancer. Nothing about Emily moving back to help her sister. Nothing that corroborated their story. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to run, but I wasn't going to waltz into what might be a trap either. I needed allies, people who knew the truth and could help me navigate whatever game Linda was playing. I called Sheriff Williams and asked him to meet me for breakfast at Maggie's Diner. Over coffee and pancakes, I told him an edited version of my story, that I'd left Ohio to escape an abusive marriage, that my ex-wife's family had tracked me down, and that I was concerned they might cause trouble. The sheriff, a laconic man in his 50s, listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. I always figured you were running from something, he said. Didn't figure it for a woman problem, though. It's more than that, I admitted. There might be money involved. A lot of money. Sheriff Williams sipped his coffee. You saying these folks might try to harm you? I'm saying it's possible. He set down his mug. Tell you what, I'll have Deputy Ramirez keep an eye on your place in the garage for the next few days. And I'll run checks on these visitors of yours. What did you say their names were? Emily Davis and Ryan Turner. Staying at the roadside motel, room 14. He made a note in a small pad. And your ex-wife? Linda Turner, though she might be using her maiden name now, Davis. The sheriff nodded. I'll see what I can find out. In the meantime, you might want to stay with a friend, just to be safe. I shook my head. I'm done hiding, but I appreciate the backup. After breakfast, I went to open the garage as usual. Joey was already there, sweeping the floor. Morning, boss, he called cheerfully. You look like hell. Thanks, I said dryly. Listen, Joey, I might have some personal issues come up in the next few days. If anyone comes looking for me that you don't recognize, don't tell them anything. Just call me or the sheriff, okay? Joey's young face turned serious. Sure thing, Mr. Thomas. Everything okay? It will be, I said, hoping it was true. The morning passed normally. Oil changes, tire rotations, a fuel pump replacement on Mrs. Henderson's ancient Buick. I was under a car when Joey called out that I had visitors. I slid out from under the chassis, wiping my hands on a rag. Standing in the doorway of the garage were two people I didn't recognize. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his 30s and a young woman who looked barely out of her teens. The man stepped forward, hand extended. Mr. Thomas, or should I say Turner? I'm Daniel Harris. This is Megan. My heart stopped. Megan, my youngest daughter, now 17. She looked so much like her mother, it hurt. Megan, I whispered. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Hi, Dad. I crossed the distance between us in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug. She was stiff at first, then melted against me, sobbing into my shirt. I thought you didn't want us anymore, she cried. Mom said you left because you didn't love us. That's not true, I said fiercely. I never stopped loving you, not for one day. Over her head, I looked at the man who'd brought her. And you are? Daniel Harris, he repeated. Rachel's husband. I'm a detective with the Houston PD. That pulled me up short. Rachel's married? Daniel nodded. 3 years now. She's only 23, I said, feeling suddenly old. She grew up fast after you left, he said, not unkindly. Had to. I released Megan reluctantly. We should talk somewhere private. I closed the garage early, leaving Joey in charge of the convenience store, and took Daniel and Megan back to my house. On the way, I called Sheriff Williams to let him know I had more visitors, just in case. Once we were settled in my living room, Daniel got straight to the point. I know why you left, Mr. Turner. I've seen the emails, the insurance policy, everything. I looked at him sharply. How? Rachel never believed you just abandoned the family. She kept digging, even when Linda told her to let it go. When she and I got serious, I helped her. It's what I do for a living, after all. And what did you find? I asked cautiously. Daniel pulled out a folder from his bag. A lot. The life insurance policy, for starters. $6 million for accidental death. But there's more. Linda took out loans in your name after you disappeared. Maxed out credit cards. Even tried to sell your half of the house, which she couldn't legally do since you only transferred it conditionally in the separation agreement. I took the folder, flipping through documents that confirmed everything he was saying. So she's been stealing from me for 7 years. Essentially, yes, and from your children. The college funds you set up for them? Emptied. The inheritance from your parents? Gone. I looked up in alarm. My parents, are they? They're fine, Daniel assured me. Still living in the same house in Riverbend. But Linda told them you'd asked her to manage their finances after you left. They trusted her because she was your wife. My blood boiled. She robbed my parents? Technically, she borrowed against their home equity, but yes. Megan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Mom changed after you left. She was always angry, always worried about money. Emily moved in with us, and they were always whispering together, stopping when one of us came into the room. Did you know about the genetic test? I asked her gently. About Ryan and about me not being your biological daughter, Megan finished. I found out last year. Mom was drunk and let it slip. That's when I started asking questions. I'm so sorry, Megan. I never wanted you to find out that way. She shrugged, trying to look tough, despite the tears still drying on her cheeks. It doesn't matter. You're still my dad, the only one I've ever known. Her words warmed something in me that had been cold for a very long time. So why come looking for me now? I asked Daniel. After all these years. Daniel exchanged a glance with Megan. 2 reasons. First, Linda's getting desperate. The money's running out, and her creditors are closing in. Second, she's engaged. That caught me by surprise. Engaged to who? Robert Winters. He's a lawyer in Riverbend, used to work for the district attorney's office. Now he has his own practice, specializing in insurance claims and estate planning. The pieces started falling into place. And let me guess, he's helping her try to have me declared legally dead so she can collect on that insurance policy. Daniel nodded. They filed the petition last month. In Ohio, a missing person can be declared dead after 7 years without contact. That's next week. So Emily and Ryan showing up here was to confirm you're alive, Daniel finished. They probably planned to tell Linda, who would then withdraw the petition before a judge could rule on it. But why would she do that? I asked, confused. If she wants the money, because insurance fraud is a felony, Daniel explained. If she files knowing you're alive, she goes to prison. But if she can arrange another accident for you after confirming your location, she collects legally, I said grimly, and with her new lawyer fiancé to help navigate any suspicions. Megan looked horrified. You think Mom's trying to have you killed? I didn't want to frighten her, but I couldn't lie either. I think it's a possibility we need to consider. Daniel nodded in agreement. That's why we're here, to warn you and to help figure out a plan. What about Rachel, I asked, and Ryan? Where do they stand in all this? Rachel's back in Ohio, keeping an eye on Linda and Emily. She's the one who tipped us off when they suddenly took off for Texas, Daniel said. As for Ryan, we're not sure. He and Linda have always been close. But from what Megan says, he seemed genuinely shocked when Emily told him they'd found you. I thought about Ryan's reaction in the bar when I told him about the genetic test. The shock had seemed real. I don't think he knows what his mother is planning, I said slowly. I'm not even sure Emily knows the whole story. Daniel leaned forward. Mr. Turner. Mike, I interrupted. If you're married to my daughter, you might as well use my first name. He smiled slightly. Mike, we need to move quickly. Linda and her fiancé have connections in law enforcement back in Ohio. And I don't have any jurisdiction here in Texas. So what's the plan? I asked. First, we document everything. Make copies of all the evidence, store it in multiple secure locations. Second, we file a formal complaint with the FBI about the identity theft and financial fraud. That gets federal investigators involved, which takes it out of the hands of Linda's local connections. And third, I prompted. Daniel's expression turned grim. We set a trap. Use you as bait to catch whoever they send to handle the accident. Megan protested immediately. No, that's too dangerous. I considered it carefully. It might be our best option. If we catch someone in the act, we have concrete evidence of attempted murder. Without that, it's just speculation and old emails. Exactly, Daniel nodded. What about my identity here? I asked. Once we go to the authorities, Michael Thomas disappears. I've built a life here, a business. We can work with that, Daniel assured me. Get your real name restored legally, transfer the business ownership. It won't be simple, but it's doable. I looked around my modest living room, thinking about all I'd built in Clearwater. I'd miss it, but perhaps it was time to stop hiding, time to reclaim my real life. Okay, I said finally. I'm in, but we do this my way, no unnecessary risks. Daniel nodded. Agreed. We'll need local help, though. Someone you trust. Sheriff Williams, I said without hesitation. He already knows something's up, and he's a good man. Perfect. We'll bring him in tomorrow. For tonight, though, I think Megan should stay at a hotel in the next town over. Somewhere Linda's people won't think to look. I shook my head. She stays with me. I've missed 7 years with my daughter. I'm not missing another night. Megan smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. I'd like that, Dad. Daniel didn't look happy but nodded. All right, but I'm staying too, and we set up some basic security measures. That night, Megan and I talked about the years we'd lost. Her eyes lit up when she described her passion for marine biology, and I found myself sharing stories about my new life in Texas. The good parts, anyway. For a few precious hours, we weren't a family torn apart by lies and betrayal. We were just a father and daughter reconnecting, making up for lost time. Why didn't you try to contact us? She asked as the night grew late. Let us know you were okay. I was afraid, I admitted, afraid Linda would track me down, afraid she'd turn you all against me with lies. And later I thought you might be better off without me complicating your lives. We weren't better off, Megan said softly. We needed our dad. I blinked back tears. I'm so sorry, Megs. I thought I was protecting you by staying away. You can make up for it now, she said, squeezing my hand. Come home with us. Is that what you want? For me to come back to Riverbend? She nodded eagerly. Grandma and Grandpa miss you so much, and Rachel's going to have a baby in a few months. You could be there for that. A grandchild. The thought hit me like a thunderbolt. Rachel's pregnant? Yeah, little girl. They're going to name her Lily. For the first time in 7 years, I let myself imagine a future beyond hiding, a future with my family in it. The next morning, we met with Sheriff Williams at his office. Daniel laid out everything, the insurance fraud, the financial crimes, the suspicion that Linda and her associates might be planning to harm me. The sheriff listened attentively, asking sharp questions that showed he was taking it seriously. When Daniel finished, he sat back in his chair and fixed me with a penetrating look. So you've been living under a false identity in my town for 7 years, Mike? I nodded. Not completely false, just adjusted. I never lied about who I am, just my last name and where I came from. He considered this. You've been a good citizen, paid your taxes, created jobs, never gave me a lick of trouble. He sighed. All right, I'm in. What do you need from me? Daniel outlined his plan. We would let Emily and Ryan know I was willing to meet with Linda, but only on my terms, at my house with Sheriff Williams present as a neutral third party. Meanwhile, we'd set up surveillance to catch anyone trying to scope out my property or tamper with my truck. And what about the ex-Mrs. Turner and this lawyer fellow? Sheriff Williams asked. You think they'll show themselves or work through proxies? Proxies most likely, Daniel said. Based on the emails Mike saw years ago, Brad Coleman, Emily's ex-husband, was their go-to guy for dirty work. We need to find out if he's in the area. The sheriff nodded. I'll put out some feelers. Not many strangers come through Clearwater without someone noticing. We spent the rest of the day setting up. Daniel installed small cameras around my property, covering all approaches to the house and garage. Sheriff Williams assigned a deputy to park within view of the roadside motel, watching room 14. I went about my business as usual, though I kept my service pistol, a relic from my days in the National Guard that I'd brought with me from Ohio, close at hand. That evening, I called the number on the business card Emily had left. Ryan answered. It's Michael Turner, I said when he hesitated. I've been thinking about what you said, about your mother being sick. She is, Ryan insisted. She doesn't have much time left. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'd like to see her, to clear the air before it's too late. I could hear the relief in Ryan's voice. That's great. We can drive to Houston, catch the first flight. No, I cut him off. I'm not going back to Ohio. If she wants to see me, she can come here, to my house. But she's too sick to travel, Ryan protested. Then I guess we don't have much to talk about. There was a pause, then I heard muffled voices as Ryan consulted with someone. Emily, presumably. Hold on, he said after a moment. Emily wants to talk to you. Michael? Emily's voice came on the line. Thank you for reconsidering. Linda will be so grateful. I'm not doing it for her, I said coldly. I'm doing it for my children, for closure. Of course, she said smoothly. About the arrangements. Linda really isn't well enough to fly. Not my problem, Emily sighed. What if we compromise? There's a clinic in Houston that can provide the care she needs during travel. We could bring her there, and you could meet us in the city. I almost smiled at how neatly she was trying to move me away from my home turf into a location they could control. No, my house, here in Clearwater. Take it or leave it. Another pause. All right, but it will take a few days to arrange medical transport. Fine, Saturday, 2 p.m. And Emily, I'm bringing a friend, the local sheriff, just to keep things civil. Is that really necessary? She asked, a hint of alarm in her voice. It is if you want me there. After more protesting, she finally agreed. We hung up and I turned to Daniel and Megan, who had been listening on speakerphone. They took the bait, Daniel said. Now we wait and watch. We didn't have to wait long. That night, around 3 a.m., one of Daniel's cameras picked up movement near my garage. A figure in dark clothing was examining my truck, paying particular attention to the brake lines. Daniel woke me immediately. We watched the live feed on his laptop as the intruder worked methodically, clearly experienced at whatever sabotage he was attempting. That's our guy, Daniel whispered. Should we call the sheriff? I shook my head. Not yet, let him finish. Let's get all the evidence we can. 20 minutes later, the figure slipped away into the darkness. Daniel immediately checked the camera covering the street and caught the man getting into a dark sedan parked 2 blocks away. Got the plate, he said triumphantly, jotting down the number. Now we call the sheriff. Sheriff Williams arrived within 15 minutes, accompanied by 2 deputies. Daniel showed him the footage and the license plate. Rental car, the sheriff said, after running the plate. Picked up at Houston Airport yesterday afternoon. Can you find out who rented it? I asked. Already on it. Meanwhile, nobody touches that truck. It's evidence now. By morning, we had a name. William Bradley Coleman. Brad, just as I'd suspected. He's ex-military, Daniel told me as we sat in Sheriff Williams' office. Dishonorable discharge 8 years ago for assault. Since then, he's been picked up for various offenses, but nothing serious enough to put him away for long. And his connection to Emily? The sheriff asked. They were married for 3 years, divorced about a year before Mike disappeared. From what Rachel could find out, they've stayed in touch. Emily bailed him out of jail twice in the last 5 years. Sheriff Williams leaned back in his chair. So we've got him on attempted vehicular tampering, possibly attempted murder, if we can prove the brake lines were sabotaged. But how do we connect him to your ex and her sister? Phone records, Daniel suggested. If we can get a warrant for his cell phone, we might find communications with Emily or Linda. That'll take time, the sheriff pointed out, and a lot more evidence than we have now. Judges don't issue warrants on hunches, even good ones. I thought for a moment, what if we confronted him directly? Used what we know to flip him against Linda and Emily? Daniel looked skeptical. That's risky. He might refuse to talk, or worse, warn them that we're onto them. Not if we play it right, I insisted. Men like Brad have one loyalty, to themselves. If he thinks he's being set up to take the fall, he might turn on them to save his own skin. Sheriff Williams nodded slowly. It could work, but we'd need to isolate him first. Make sure he can't contact anyone. And we need to be careful not to tip our hand to Emily and Ryan, Daniel added. As far as they are concerned, everything's proceeding as planned. We spent the next day preparing. Sheriff Williams arrested Brad on a minor charge, public intoxication, after spotting him at a bar in town, and held him in the county jail. Meanwhile, Daniel and I worked out exactly how to approach him. That night, with Megan safely tucked away at my neighbor Maggie's house, we made our move. The sheriff brought Brad to an interrogation room where Daniel and I waited. Brad was a hard-looking man, all muscle and meanness. His eyes narrowed when he saw me. Who the hell are you people? He demanded. I know my rights. I want a lawyer. You're not under arrest, Mr. Coleman, Sheriff Williams said mildly. Just helping us with some inquiries. You're free to go anytime. Brad started to stand up. Although, the sheriff continued, if you walk out that door, I'll have to process the evidence we found on your person and in your rental car, and then you would be under arrest for attempted murder. Brad sank back into his chair, his face expressionless. I don't know what you're talking about. I leaned forward. Cut the crap, Brad. We have you on video tampering with my truck. The brake lines, specifically. Very professional work. Military training, I'm guessing? A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Here's what I don't understand, I continued. Why would you risk a lengthy prison sentence for Linda and Emily? What's in it for you? I don't know any Linda or Emily, he said flatly. Daniel slid a photo across the table. Brad with Emily at what looked like a bar dated just 3 months ago. Try again. Brad's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Let me tell you what I think, I said conversationally. I think they promised you a cut of the insurance money. $6 million is a lot to split. But here's the problem, Brad. You're the only one taking the risk. If you'd succeeded in sabotaging my brakes and I died, who do you think the police would look at first? Not me, Brad said, but there was a hint of doubt in his voice. The local mechanic's brake lines just happened to fail catastrophically. Right after his long-lost ex-wife's sister shows up in town? Come on, you'd be the prime suspect, and Linda and Emily would be 600 miles away with perfect alibis. Brad shifted uncomfortably. They're setting you up, man, Daniel chimed in, using you, and when it all goes south, you'll be the one doing 25 to life while they're living it up on the insurance payout. That's not how it is, Brad muttered. No, I raised an eyebrow. Then how is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're taking all the risk for what? A promise from a woman who's screwed over everyone she's ever known? Brad glared at me. You don't know what you're talking about. This wasn't about killing anyone, just scaring you, making you leave town. I exchanged glances with Daniel. This was unexpected. Cutting brake lines isn't meant to scare someone, Brad, Daniel said gently. It's meant to kill them. Brad ran a hand through his short hair. Look, I was just doing what I was told. Emily said they needed you gone before Saturday, that you were threatening Linda somehow. Threatening her how? I pressed. I don't know. She just said you had to be gone. Out of the picture. Sheriff Williams, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Mr. Coleman, you're in a whole heap of trouble here. Attempted vehicular sabotage is a felony. With your record, you're looking at significant time. But if you cooperate, tell us everything you know about what Linda and Emily are planning, I might be able to put in a good word with the DA. Brad looked between the three of us, weighing his options. Finally, he slumped in his chair. What do you want to know? For the next hour, Brad laid it all out. Linda's cancer was a lie. The whole story about her wanting to reconcile before dying was fabrication. The real plan was much simpler. Get me out of the way before the hearing to declare me legally dead. Linda needs the insurance money, Brad explained. She's in deep with some bad people. Gambling debts, loans from the wrong sort of lenders. And the lawyer guy she's with? He's in on it too. He's the one who came up with the 7-year plan. Robert Winters, Daniel supplied. Brad nodded. Yeah, him. He found some legal loophole. Said if Mike had been gone for 7 years with no contact, they could have him declared dead and collect the insurance. But he had to stay gone. If he showed up alive before the declaration, the plan falls apart, I finished. Exactly. So when Emily and Ryan found you, they told Linda. She freaked out. Said you had to be dealt with before Saturday's hearing. And she sent you to do the dirty work, Sheriff Williams said. Brad looked defensive. I wasn't going to kill anybody. Just damage the truck enough to put him in the hospital for a few days. Long enough for the hearing to go through. None of us believed him, but it didn't matter. We had what we needed. A direct link between the sabotage attempt and Linda. What about Ryan, I asked. Is he part of this too? Brad shook his head. Nah, the kid's clueless. Emily's using him as cover. He really thinks his mom is sick and wants to make peace. That at least was a relief. So what happens now? Brad asked. Sheriff Williams stood up. Now, Mr. Coleman, you're going to put all this in a signed statement, and then you're going to help us catch your employers in the act. The plan came together quickly. Brad would call Emily, tell her there had been complications with the job, and that he needed to meet her in person. We'd wire him up, record the conversation, and catch her incriminating herself on tape. Meanwhile, I would continue with the charade of meeting Lyndon on Saturday, forcing her hand. If everything went according to plan, we'd have evidence against all the conspirators before the weekend was out. Brad made the call from the sheriff's office, with all of us listening. It's me, he said when she answered. We got a problem. What kind of problem? Emily's voice was tense. Not over the phone. Meet me at the diner on Route 16 tomorrow morning at 9. I can't. Ryan will wonder where I'm going. Figure it out, Brad snapped. This is important. Something went wrong with the pa. A pause. Did you take care of our problem or not? Like I said, not over the phone, 9 a.m. Come alone. He hung up before she could argue further. Good, Daniel said. Now we wait. The next morning, Brad sat in a booth at the back of the diner, wearing a wire under his shirt. Sheriff Williams and a deputy were positioned as customers at the counter. Daniel and I watched from a parked car across the street, listening through a receiver. Emily arrived precisely at 9, looking nervous. She slid into the booth across from Brad. What happened? She demanded without preamble. Is Turner still a problem? Brad leaned forward. The job didn't go as planned. Someone's been watching his place. I couldn't get close enough to finish it. Emily's face hardened. That's not acceptable, Brad. Linda needs this taken care of before Saturday's hearing. It's not that simple. The local sheriff's been sniffing around, and Turner's got some guy staying with him. Looks like law enforcement. What? Emily paled. Are you sure? Professional courtesy. You can spot a cop a mile away. Emily tapped her fingers nervously on the table. This complicates things. If he goes to the hearing, everything falls apart, Brad finished. I get it, but I'm not taking a murder charge for you and Linda, not without more money. We discussed your payment. That was before cops got involved. Now the price goes up, way up. Emily's eyes narrowed. How much? $500,000. Wow, after the insurance pays out. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm the one taking all the risk while you and Linda collect the big payday. $6 million, right? $500,000 seems fair for the guy doing the dirty work. Emily glanced around the diner, lowering her voice. Fine, whatever. Just make sure he doesn't make it to that hearing on Saturday. And Linda's okay with this? With having her ex-husband killed? Emily laughed bitterly. Linda's the one who suggested it in the first place. 7 years ago and again now. Trust me, she won't shed any tears over Michael Turner. What about the kids? They're his children, right? Only one of them, technically. And they've managed without him for 7 years. They'll survive. In the car, I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to storm into the diner and confront her myself. Daniel put a restraining hand on my arm. We've got her, he said quietly. Let it play out. Back in the diner, Brad was playing his role perfectly. So how do you want me to do it? Another accident? Emily nodded. Something that looks natural. Heart attack, maybe. You were military. You must know ways. I know ways, Brad confirmed, but I'll need details. When's he alone? Does he have security systems? What about the guy staying with him? Ryan and I are supposed to meet him at his house on Saturday at 2 p.m. The sheriff will be there too, apparently, but that's too late. The hearing is at 10 a.m. Ohio time. So I need to take care of him tonight or tomorrow, Brad mused. What about the other guy? I don't know. Turner just said he was bringing the local sheriff to keep things civil. Maybe you could create a distraction, pull the sheriff away. Brad nodded thoughtfully. I could work with that, but I'll need something in advance. Good faith money. Emily hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. $5,000. All I could get on short notice. The rest comes after the job is done and the insurance pays out. Brad took the envelope and peeked inside. This will do for now. I'll take care of Turner tonight. Make it look like a break-in gone wrong. Good. Call me when it's done. Emily stood to leave, then paused. And Brad, don't screw this up. Linda and I aren't the only ones with something to lose here. After she left, Sheriff Williams gave it a few minutes, then followed her out. Brad remained in the booth until Daniel and I entered the diner and gave him the all-clear signal. We got it all, Daniel confirmed, holding up the receiver. Clear as a bell. She incriminated herself and Linda both. What now? Brad asked, looking surprisingly relaxed for a man who'd just helped set up his ex-wife. Now you go back to jail, Sheriff Williams said, returning to the diner, and we prepare for the next phase. With Emily's recorded confession, we had enough to arrest her immediately, but Daniel suggested a different approach. Let's wait, he proposed. Follow her, see who she contacts. She might lead us to others involved in the conspiracy. Sheriff Williams agreed. He assigned a deputy to discreetly tail Emily while we regrouped at his office. I've been thinking, I said as we reviewed the recording. We need to know what's happening back in Ohio at the hearing. Daniel nodded. Rachel's on it. She's planning to attend. Keep an eye on Linda and Robert. Can she record them? Get evidence like we did with Emily? Ohio's a one-party consent state for recordings, Daniel confirmed. As long as she's part of the conversation, she can record it legally. I felt a surge of pride for my oldest daughter, fighting for justice on my behalf. We should warn her to be careful. If Linda's desperate enough to have me killed, she might not stop there. Rachel can handle herself, Daniel assured me, and she won't be alone. Her friend Sophia is a county prosecutor. She knows everything and is helping unofficially. That night, Emily made her move, but not the one we expected. Instead of contacting Linda or plotting further against me, she and Ryan checked out of the roadside motel and headed for Houston. The deputy following them reported they went straight to the airport and bought tickets for the first morning flight back to Ohio. She's cutting her losses, Daniel surmised, when we got the news. Going back to warn Linda that the plan failed. Or to make a new plan, I suggested. Either way, we need to move fast. If Emily makes it back to Ohio before the hearing, Sheriff Williams was already on the phone with the Houston police, arranging for Emily to be detained at the airport. But bureaucracy moved slowly, and by the time the authorization came through, her flight had already departed. Now what? I asked, feeling our carefully constructed plan unraveling. Daniel checked his watch. It's 7 a.m. in Ohio. The hearing is at 10. Rachel should be there by now. He called her, putting the phone on speaker. Dad's alive, Rachel said without preamble when she answered. I just told Mom's lawyer. You should have seen his face. What about Linda? Daniel asked. Is she there? Not yet, but Robert Winters is having a meltdown in the courthouse hallway. He's trying to get the hearing postponed. On what grounds? I asked. There was a pause. Dad, is that you? It's me, sweetheart. I'm here with Daniel and the sheriff. I heard a muffled sob. Dad, I've missed you so much. I've missed you too, more than you can imagine. But we need to focus right now. What's happening with the hearing? Rachel collected herself. Winters is claiming he has new evidence that you might be alive. He's trying to delay until he can investigate these new claims. The judge isn't buying it, another female voice added, presumably Rachel's friend Sophia. She's insisting the hearing proceed as scheduled unless Linda withdraws the petition entirely. Which she won't do because that would mean admitting she knew you were alive all along, Rachel explained. So either way, she's trapped, I realized. If the hearing goes forward, you testify that I'm alive, and she's exposed for fraud. If she withdraws, it raises questions about why she suddenly changed her mind. Exactly, Rachel confirmed. And now Emily's trying to call her, but she's not answering. Sophia's got a contact in the county prosecutor's office standing by. The moment Linda perjures herself in that courtroom, they're ready to move. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. After 7 years of hiding, of looking over my shoulder, justice was finally within reach. Rachel, I said, my voice thick with emotion, I want you to know how proud I am of you, of all you've done. Just come home, Dad, she said softly. That's all I want. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Rachel kept us updated via text as the hearing approached. Linda arrived at the courthouse with Robert Winters at her side, looking confident despite his obvious distress. She ignored Rachel completely, not knowing her daughter was now her biggest threat. At 10 a.m. Ohio time, the hearing began. Rachel was allowed in as an interested party, Linda's daughter who might inherit from my estate. She kept her phone on silent, texting updates when she could. Linda just testified that she hasn't heard from you in 7 years. Judge asking if she has any reason to believe you're still alive. She said no, perjury on record. Rachel just called as witness. Drop the bomb. Linda's face. Judge has suspended proceedings. Prosecutor moving in. Finally, the call we'd been waiting for came through. They arrested her, Rachel said triumphantly. Right there in the courtroom. Linda and Robert both, for insurance fraud and perjury. You should have seen it, Dad. She was screaming that it was all a misunderstanding. I closed my eyes, feeling a complex mix of emotions, relief, vindication, and an unexpected twinge of sadness for the woman I'd once loved. "What about Emily?" Daniel asked. "Her flight should have landed by now." "Police are waiting for her at the gate," Rachel confirmed. "Sophia's contact arranged it. They're charging her as a co-conspirator based on the recording you sent." "And Ryan?" I asked. "What happens to him?" Rachel's voice softened. "He's devastated, Dad. Finding out about the DNA test, then learning his mother was willing to commit murder for money. It's a lot to process." "Tell him I'd like to talk to him," I said, "when he's ready. None of this is his fault." "I will," she promised. "So, when are you coming home?" Home, the word resonated differently now. For 7 years, Clearwater had been my refuge, but it had never truly been home. "Soon," I told her. "There are some things I need to take care of here first, but soon." The aftermath was both simpler and more complicated than I'd anticipated. With Linda, Emily, and Robert in custody, the immediate danger was past. Brad Coleman agreed to testify against them in exchange for reduced charges. The evidence was overwhelming: the recorded confession, the attempted sabotage of my truck, the fraudulent insurance claim, the financial crimes. But rebuilding my life would take time. I had a business to transition, a legal identity to reclaim, and relationships to repair. The children I'd left behind were now adults with lives of their own. The parents I'd abandoned were 7 years older. 7 years of memories lost. Sheriff Williams helped me navigate the legal aspects of returning to my true identity. The local bank worked with me to transfer business ownership from Michael Thomas to Michael Turner. Joey, my young employee, took the news of my secret past with surprising equanimity. "So you're not really Mr. Thomas?" he asked when I explained the situation. "No, my real name is Turner, Michael Turner." He shrugged. "Does this mean I don't get paid this week?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "No, it means you're getting a promotion. I'll need a manager when I go back to Ohio for a while." His eyes widened. "Seriously? You trust me with that?" "Why not? You've earned it." As the pieces of my old life and new began to fit together, there was one more surprise waiting for me. One evening, as I was closing up the garage, a woman approached, tall, with auburn hair and cautious eyes. "Michael Turner?" she asked hesitantly. I tensed automatically, still not fully adjusted to using my real name again. "Yes? I'm Julia Brooks, Maggie's niece. She said you might be able to help me." Julia, I learned over coffee at Maggie's diner, was running from her own past. An abusive husband in the military who refused to accept their marriage was over. "The restraining order doesn't stop him," she explained, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "He shows up at my work, my apartment. The police say they can't do anything until he actually hurts me." "By then it might be too late," I said, understanding all too well. She nodded, eyes downcast. "Aunt Maggie said you might understand, that you know what it's like to need a fresh start." I did understand, better than most. "What do you need?" "A job, somewhere to stay where he won't find me. Just until my transfer to the Marine Research Center in Corpus Christi comes through." I thought about my convenience store, which had been running short-handed since I promoted Joey to garage manager. "Can you operate a cash register? Stock shelves?" Hope flickered in her eyes. "Yes, I managed a bookstore before I had to leave." "The job's yours if you want it, and there's an apartment above the store. It's nothing fancy, but it's secure." "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." I smiled sadly, because 7 years ago, someone helped me when I needed it. It's time I paid that forward. Julia became more than an employee. As the weeks passed, she proved herself intelligent, hardworking, and surprisingly knowledgeable about business operations. With her help, the convenience store's profits increased by 30%. She had a knack for customer service that I'd always lacked, and a head for numbers that impressed even my accountant. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Linda, Emily, and Robert moved forward. I made several trips back to Ohio, reconnecting with Rachel and her husband, with Megan, with my parents who cried when they first joined me. Even Ryan eventually agreed to meet, though our relationship remained tentative, fraught with the complicated legacy of biology and betrayal. The prosecutor offered Linda and her co-conspirators a plea deal, reduced sentences in exchange for full confessions. Linda and Robert took it. Emily surprisingly refused, insisting on her innocence despite the damning recording. She would face a full trial and potentially much more prison time. With each visit to Ohio, the pull of my old home strengthened. My parents were aging. I'd missed too much time with them already. Rachel's baby daughter, my granddaughter Lily, was a joy I hadn't known I needed in my life. Even Riverbend itself called to me, familiar streets and faces a comfort after years of exile. But Clearwater had become part of me too. My business was thriving. I had friends here, a community that had accepted me without knowing my full story. And there was Julia, whose quiet strength and determination reminded me daily of my own journey. One evening, as we were closing up the store together, I broached the subject that had been on my mind. "I need to go back to Ohio," I said. "Not just for a visit this time." Julia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Figured that was coming. Your family needs you." "Yes," I agreed, "but I've built something here too, something I'm not ready to walk away from." She shelved a can of beans with careful precision. "So what will you do?" "I'm thinking of splitting my time. 6 months here, 6 months there. At least until we see how the expansion goes." The expansion had been Julia's idea, adding a second convenience store location in the neighboring town. It was a sound business move, one that would create more jobs and increase our revenue substantially. "We?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. I took a deep breath. "I'm hoping you'll consider becoming a partner in the business. You've more than earned it." Her eyes widened. "Michael, I can't possibly afford to buy in." "That's not what I'm proposing," I interrupted gently. "Your contribution would be your skills, your ideas, your hard work. I'd provide the capital, equal partners." "Why would you do that?" She sounded genuinely confused. "Because you're brilliant at this. Because the business has grown more in 6 months with you than in the previous 3 years without you. Because—" I hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. "Because I care about you. More than I expected to care about anyone again." A flush spread across her cheeks. "Michael." "You don't have to answer now," I said quickly. "Think about it. Talk to a lawyer if you want to. Make sure it's the right move for you." She studied my face for a long moment. "And if I say yes to the partnership, then we build something together, something that's ours. And if I say yes to the other thing, the thing you didn't quite say," my heart hammered in my chest, "then I'd be the luckiest man in Texas." Her smile started slowly, then bloomed into something radiant. "I'll think about it. Both offers." 3 days later, she gave me her answer, yes to the partnership, maybe to the rest. "I need time," she explained. "My last relationship left scars." "I understand scars," I assured her. "Take all the time you need." Life settled into a new rhythm. I divided my time between Clearwater and Riverbend, rebuilding connections in both places. Julia proved herself an exceptional business partner, and my relationship with my children strengthened with each visit. The legal proceedings concluded with Linda and Robert each receiving 5-year sentences for fraud and conspiracy. Emily, who went to trial, was convicted on more serious charges, including attempted murder for hire. She would serve at least 15 years. As for Brad Coleman, his cooperation earned him a reduced sentence of 3 years, with eligibility for parole after 1. I harbored no illusions that prison would reform him, but at least he'd been honest in the end. Sometimes that's the most you can ask for. 1 year to the day after Emily and Ryan had walked into the watering hole and turned my carefully constructed life upside down, I found myself back in that same bar. But this time I wasn't alone. Julia sat across from me, sipping a glass of wine, her auburn hair catching the dim light. "Happy anniversary," she said with a wry smile. 1 year since your past caught up with you." "Best thing that ever happened to me," I replied honestly. She raised an eyebrow. "Really? Being hunted by your ex-wife was the best thing ever?" "It brought me back to my family. It freed me from hiding. And indirectly," I reached across the table to take her hand, "it brought you into my life." Julia's expression softened. "When you put it that way." "I've been thinking," I said, my thumb tracing circles on her palm, "about the future, about us." "Have you now?" There was a teasing note in her voice, but her eyes were serious. This back and forth between Texas and Ohio, it's not sustainable long term. Not if we're going to build something real together. She nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. Your family is there. Your roots. But our business is here, I countered. And you love the coast, the marine research you're doing on weekends. So what's the solution? I took a deep breath. What if we bring them here? My parents are retired. Rachel and Daniel could transfer to the Houston PD. Megan's looking at marine biology programs for college anyway. Julia's eyes widened. You want to move your entire family to Texas? I want to stop living a divided life, I clarified. I want to build a future with you, right here in Clearwater. But I also want my family to be part of that future. And you think they'd come? Just pick up and move states? I think they've missed enough years with me that they'd consider it, especially if... I hesitated, suddenly nervous. If what? She prompted. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, especially if they had a wedding to attend. Julia's hand flew to her mouth as I opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. Michael, I know it's only been a year, I said quickly, and I promise to give you time. But I've spent 7 years of my life hiding, Julia. I don't want to waste another day pretending I'm not completely in love with you. Tears welled in her eyes. Ask me properly. I slid from my chair and knelt beside her, ignoring the curious glances from the few other patrons. Julia Brooks, will you marry me? Be my partner in life as well as business? Her smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Yes, yes to all of it. 2 months later, my parents' moving truck arrived in Clearwater, followed closely by Rachel, Daniel, and baby Lily. Megan had already been accepted to the marine biology program at Texas A&M Corpus Christi, just a 2-hour drive away. Even Ryan came for the wedding, his presence a tentative step toward reconciliation. We held the ceremony in my backyard, now our backyard, under a canopy of Texas stars. Sheriff Williams served as my best man. Maggie, who had introduced me to Julia, beamed from the front row as her niece walked down the makeshift aisle. As Julia and I exchanged vows, I marveled at the strange, winding path that had led me here. A DNA test that shattered my world. 7 years of exile. A conspiracy that nearly cost me my life. And yet, without those trials, I wouldn't be standing here, surrounded by both my old family and my new one, about to begin the next chapter of my life. During the reception, Sheriff Williams pulled me aside, a serious expression on his normally stoic face. Just got word from the county prosecutor, he said quietly. They're expanding the investigation based on evidence from Linda's case. Seems your ex-wife wasn't the only one running insurance scams in Riverbend. She's named names, hoping for a reduced sentence. I raised my eyebrows. Anyone I know? Several prominent citizens. The mayor, 2 council members, even the police chief. I whistled softly. A regular corruption ring. Looks that way. Your case broke it open. He clapped me on the shoulder. You did good, Mike, facing your past head on instead of running again. I watched Julia laughing with Rachel, my mother cradling baby Lily, my father deep in conversation with Daniel. Megan was showing Ryan photos on her phone, the 2 of them cautiously rebuilding their sibling bond despite the lack of biological connection. I'm done running, I told the sheriff, for good. Later that night, as Julia and I swayed to a slow song under strings of twinkling lights, she rested her head on my shoulder. Happy? She murmured. I gazed around at my assembled family, the one I'd lost and found again, and the one I was just beginning to build. At the business we'd grown together, at the community that had embraced us both. More than I ever thought possible, I answered truthfully. Who would have believed a DNA test could lead to all this? She smiled up at me. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. As we danced under the stars, I knew she was right. 7 years ago, a genetic test had shattered my world. Today it had led me to a new one, better and brighter than I could have imagined. Not despite the pain and betrayal, but because of it. Because sometimes the only way to find your true path is to lose the one you thought you were meant to follow.